Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker, and it's great to have you here with us today. And whether you're watching on YouTube or listening perhaps as you walk the dog or driving the car, running on the treadmill or whatever it is that you're doing, I just want to start by saying thank you for being a listener. Now, our podcast is growing and we need your help to continue growing because we want to get to help as many other people in the industry as possible, and you are our only marketing budget. So if you're on YouTube, then give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. And if you happen to be listening on your favorite podcast app, then give us a 5-star review and a follow, and that would be very kind of you and much appreciated. So with all that said, let's get on with today's show. Now, I totally recognize that the title of today's episode is clickbait, but let me ask you this. Would you like to be able to pay cash for a new BMW this time next year? Well, I imagine that you would. And maybe the title should have been, Do You Want to Grow in 2025? As a salon owner, I'm going to suggest that of course you want to grow because, well, if you're not growing, then you're effectively going backwards, and that rarely ends very well. So whether growth means that you want to grow your staff numbers or grow specific service sales or grow the list of services that you currently offer, or whatever else growth might mean to you. Either way, the reason that you aspire to grow is that growth leads to increased revenue, which ultimately you hope or assume will lead to increased profit as well. And what's wrong with that? So on the assumption that you're serious about growth and not just expressing a preference for growth, then there are two things that we need to start with. Now, the first is, how much do you want it to grow by? And the second one is to narrow down exactly where will the anticipated growth be coming from. So let's start with the first point. How much do you want to grow? Now, there isn't a right or wrong answer to this question because, well, amongst other things, you need to consider where it is that you're starting from. For example, a new business that's only been open a few months might be wanting to double their business revenue over the next 12 months, whereas a business that's perhaps been open for 10 years might just be shooting for a 10% growth next year on what they've achieved in 2024. So what might be realistic for one business could be fantasy land for another. So while you should be ambitious about your growth predictions, they should also be based on some sort of reality, okay? Now, the other thing to consider when talking about how much you want to grow is how will you measure the growth? For example, is it a percentage of revenue figure, or is it a dollar figure, or is it going to be a fixed target? So what do I mean by that? Well, some people will say something like, in 2025, I want to grow the salon's revenue by 10%. Someone else will say, in 2025, I want to increase sales by $100,000. And someone else might say, in 2025, I want to achieve $2 million in total sales. Now, all of those approaches are totally relevant because, well, they all include a number, which means that it's measurable. And that then takes us to the second point, which is to get clear about where you expect the growth to come from. For example, is it going to come from increased retail sales or increased services? If it's increased services, then what are the services where you see the most potential for growth? Is it haircuts or color or beauty treatments, or is it something else yet again? Or drill down even deeper and ask, what specific services do you want to grow? For example, is it that you see that there's an opportunity to increase the hair extensions side of your business? Or is it to grow the amount of treatments that you perhaps do? Once again, there's no right or wrong answer here. Only you know where the most potential is for growth in your business. So once you've decided how much you want to grow and how you will measure that growth, and then identified where the opportunities for growth are, then the next step is to drill down and put a plan or develop a strategy to make that growth predictable. So let's imagine that you've decided that you want to increase your total revenue next year by $100,000. And that you've decided that all of that increase will come from in-salon hair treatments. Now, I'll be clear with you here. This is a real example of someone who I had the pleasure to work with, and that was her goal for the year, to increase her total revenue by $100,000 and for that increase to come from additional treatments. Now, when she first told me that, I was a little bit more skeptical than she was until we walked through the numbers. So let's do that together now. Remember, the goal is $100,000 in additional treatments for the year. Now, in her case, I think the numbers went something like this. So feel free to use your calculator as I walk you through this. $100,000 in treatments is the goal, and she charged $25 for an in-salon hair treatment. So if we divide the $100,000 by $25 per treatment, that equals 4,000 treatments in total for the year that she had to do, on top of what she was already doing. And if we divide that 4,000 treatments by 52 weeks in a year, that means she has to average a total of 76 treatments a week. Now, if we assume that the salon is open 5 days, then we divide the weekly figure of 76 treatments by 5 days. Well, that equals 15 treatments a day. Now, in her case, she has 7 stylists. So 15 treatments a day divided by 7 stylists is just over 2 treatments a stylist per day. So let me ask you, is $100,000 in extra revenue possible? Well, of course it is. You see, when she first said $100,000, it seemed totally unrealistic. But as soon as you do the maths and you break it down, and in her case, it comes to only an average of just over 2 treatments a day from each stylist, then you realize that it's 100% doable. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, there are plenty of things that could go wrong. All we've done so far is prove that mathematically it's possible. So let's dig a little bit deeper and anticipate what the challenges might be. So the first thing to do is to identify who is going to do it. Now let me explain what I mean by that. So let's make an assumption and say that this is an average salon that predominantly has a female clientele of regular cut and blow dry clients, and that 40% of them have a color service. And let's imagine that each stylist that works there averages 5 to 6 clients a day, and that out of those 7 stylists, 2 of them already do 2 to 3 treatments a day. And with the 5 other stylists, maybe 3 of them average 2 to 3 treatments a week. And that the remaining 2 stylists, you'd be lucky if they did 2 treatments a month. So where is the growth going to come from? Because it's probably not going to come from the 2 stylists that are already averaging 2 or 3 treatments a day. Although they might be able to improve that number a little, the real growth needs to come from the other stylists. Because for whatever the reason, although they work in the same salon with the same products and the same economy with the same clients, the reality is that they are nowhere near as effective at upselling or recommending salon treatments as what the first 2 stylists are. So part of your strategy has to be about identifying where and who represents the greatest opportunity for growth when it comes to treatments. And that means training and one-to-one coaching in both product knowledge and consultation and communication skills. And part of your strategy has to be about leadership and goal setting and accountability and incentive and reward and marketing and merchandising. And above all, it needs to be about consistency, meaning consistency from you as the leader and consistency from the team. Because running out of steam is the second biggest challenge that you're going to face with achieving this goal. Because what often happens is that you do it for a week or even a month, but bit by bit, you and they, meaning your team, start to lose focus. And then 3 months later, you're back to where you started, with 2 of the stylists doing 80% of the salon treatments and the other 5 totally underperforming. And then the extra $100,000 that you anticipated is going to remain in your client's bank account. And just as importantly, the client's hair hasn't had the opportunity of benefiting from having had one of your fabulous treatments. So let's recap the process from the top. The first step is to set a revenue growth goal for the year. The second step is to be specific about where the growth will come from, meaning what products or services are going to grow. The third step is to identify who on your team has the most growth potential. And then you'll also need to think about what additional resources do you need. So for example, what training is needed and who needs it the most? What systems need to be developed and put in place? What incentive and reward needs to be factored in to motivate your staff to improve their performance? What marketing resources do you need? Do you need any additional advertising or marketing promotions? Do you need any printing done? And anticipate what else could go wrong. What could cause you and your team to run out of steam? And what can you do to ensure that you don't run out of steam or energy or enthusiasm? For example, what you could do to ensure that you don't run out of steam is to start tracking the numbers daily and weekly and have systems in place so that everyone on the team can see their results and the salon's results. And you need to reinforce and remind the team of the goal and the results at every team meeting that you have. And you need to reinforce the goal and the results of every individual with regular one-to-ones. And you need to help every individual on the team identify what their own goals and ambitions are and link their reward to their results. And you need to develop a visual representation of both the team and the individual's results using some sort of a graph because, well, a graph is a picture of the numbers. And hairdressers love pictures. They don't love spreadsheets. And you need to give them one number to focus on. For example, 2 treatments a day. So 2 is the number. And just like in sport, you need to build in half time, or better still, quarter time. And at the end of Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, you reinvigorate everyone around the goal and you celebrate and reward both team and individual performance, and you make a big deal out of it. And every day, you need to acknowledge and celebrate every win and every improvement because, well, behavior that gets reinforced gets repeated. And where possible, you need to enroll the support of your product supplier because, after all, they're going to win in this as well through increased sales. So how can they support you with training or product knowledge or motivation or merchandising or something else? But here's the thing. If you do all the things I've talked about, then your goal of 100,000 in increased treatment sales, or whatever your goal is, has a very good chance of becoming your new reality for this time next year. And just imagine you could, if you wanted, then go and pay cash for a new BMW. So, what are you waiting for? So look, with all that said, we need to start winding this episode up. But before we do, I want to point you towards our other resources, both free and paid for, on our website, ranging from our weekly podcast to our 2-minute salon manager videos, as well as our paid for resources, whether it's our books, our one-to-one coaching, or our online courses. And relative to today's podcast, there are a couple of resources that I want to point you towards. The first is my books, the Grow series, Grow 1, Super Stylist, Grow 2, Management, Grow 3, Team, and Grow 4, Marketing. And if you want to find out more about them or our courses or anything else, then visit us at growmysalonbusiness.com and on Instagram also at growmysalonbusiness. And I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes for today's podcast on our website. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. Until next week, look after yourself.